In this challenge video, it's going to be up to you to integrate comments into the Prisma API. So just like we did for posts in the last video, we're going to be bringing that type definition over to this file, deploying the changes, and then messing around with it inside of GraphQL Playground. Down below, I have a few challenge comments that outline exactly what I'd like you to do, and once again, the big picture goal is to add comments to the Prisma API. Let's go through all three steps. Step 1 is to copy the comment type definition over from schema.graphql. And once again, remember, you have to mark the ID as unique. Everything else can stay the same. We already have the relationships set up, so we can just bring those fields over. Step 2 is to redeploy the Prisma application. So we've made changes to this file from step 1. We have to use the correct command from the command line to actually deploy those changes. Step 3 is probably where you're going to spend the most time. This is where we're actually going to test things out. So I've broken this into 4 little pieces. First part, if we're going to make a comment on a post, that post has to be published. So step A, update our only post to be published. Then for B, what I want you to do is create a new user. This new user is going to leave a comment on that one and only post we actually have. And in order to explore the new mutations given to you, remember, you can just refer to the schema for usage. It's really important to get comfortable navigating the schema and actually being able to use it to generate your operations. So you'll get a little more practice with this in the challenge as well. And finally, we have part D. You want to fetch all of the comments. In this case, you only created one, the one comment you created in step C, but you should indeed see that comment showing up. And for each comment, just include the comment text and also grab the author's name. All right, take as much time as you need to knock that one out. Feel free to refer to anything we did in the last video since we went through a very similar process. When you're done, do make sure to test your work. That's actually one of the bigger pieces to this challenge. So once again, pause the video. When you're done, click play. How'd that go? Let's go ahead and kick things off with step 1. We're going to grab our comment type from schema.graphql. I have that sitting right here. I'm going to grab all 6 lines exactly as they are, copy them to the clipboard, and bring them over to our data model file. I'll paste it right down below the post type, and the only change we need to make is to the ID field. Remember, all of our IDs in Prisma need to be marked as unique using the @unique directive. Excellent. All of the other 3 fields can stay the same. Text is still going to be a string, author is still going to link to a user, and post is still going to link to a post. Now that brings us to step 2, the easiest of all of the steps. All we need to do for this one is to 1, save our file, and 2, run Prisma, deploy from inside of the project. This is going to make sure that the database gets updated to conform to the schema that we've currently created. So right here, we've added comment on, and I would expect all of the changes to be related to that. Down below, under changes, I have a bunch of changes related to the comment type, since we're creating it for the first time, and I also have other changes that are related to the associations with comment and users, and then down below, comment and posts. Now that we've deployed the application, we can move on to step 3, which is actually where we're going to spend most of our time working with GraphQL Playground to perform a series of steps. Step 1, we want to update our only post to be published. We can currently get the post ID using either the users or the posts query. Right here, I have users all set up. I could choose to just grab the posts for a user as well. And in this case, I could just grab the ID for all of the posts. And if I run that, I can see we have the one post for our first user. This is the only post we have, and this is the one that we're going to be updating to published, and it's the one we're going to be leaving a comment on. Now, I don't have a update post mutation, so I can go ahead and create one. Right here under a new tab, mutation, update post. And in order to figure out what update post takes, we're going to go ahead and move into the schema. For the moment, though, down below, we know we're probably going to get a post back, so we can grab the ID for that post. I'm also going to grab the title, the body, and of course, the published status. Now we can open up the schema and figure out what it takes to use that update post mutation. It's sitting right here, update post. I'm going to click that. We can see we pass in 2 arguments, data, which includes the updates, and where, which allows us to figure out which post we want to update. And we saw the exact same thing when we worked with update user. Data took in the fields we wanted to change. In this case, we changed the name, and where took in the ID of the user we were trying to alter. So let's do the same thing for our posts. Right here, I am going to pass in where. This is an object. We're going to filter by ID, and I've already copied that ID to the clipboard. The other thing we're going to provide is data. Data, also an object, takes all of the fields that we want to change, and in this case, we are just going to change the published field. I'm going to change published from false over to true. Excellent. Now we can actually go ahead and run things. So I'm going to click that play button. We can see that the post was indeed published, and now we're ready to move on to part B. Here we're going to create a new user, and that user is going to end up leaving a comment on this post. I already have a create user mutation sitting over here on the left. All I'm going to do is change the name and the email. I'm going to use myself. So I'll use Andrew as the name. Then down below for the email, I'll use andrew@example.com. If I actually fire this off, it should work as expected and perfect. We now have the user created. This can bring us on to part C. We want to create a comment for that one post. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that with the create comment mutation. So over under our mutations list, we have create comment, though I do need to refresh the schema first. Now if I open it up, we should have create comment, and it is indeed sitting right here. And we can see exactly what it takes to create a comment. We pass in the data object, we get back the comment, and if we expand data, we can see that we need to pass in obviously the text, but I also have to pass in author and post fields. This comment needs to be associated with an author, and the comment needs to be made on a particular post. Now for author, once again, we can create an author or connect an existing one, and the same thing is true with post. I can create a post or connect an existing one. We're going to be using connect for both since you've already created the user and you've already created the post. So let's go ahead and actually knock this out. One last tab right here. We're going to set up another mutation, and this one is for create comment. Now create comment is going to take the data argument, so I'm going to set that up, and I'll actually break it out onto its own line down below just to keep things nice and organized. This is indeed an object, and on here we're going to add in all of those fields. First up, what is the comment text? Well, for this one, I can just say something simple like a comment from Prisma GraphQL. Perfect. Now we have to provide the author field and the post field. So for author, which is an object, what I'm going to do is set up the connect property. Connect takes an object, and there we provide the ID of the author we want to link to. So right here, we already have that ID. That's the one I copied to the clipboard from our create user mutation. It's the ID right here. I'm going to paste that in. And then we can add another field alongside of text and alongside of author, this one to link to the correct post. So we're going to have post, which is also going to be an object. In there, we also have connect, which is an object. And then in here, this is where we have the ID of the post we want to link to. Now for our purposes, we did indeed grab that post ID. It's sitting right over here. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, bring it over to our create comment mutation, and paste it right in. Now the only thing we have to do is provide our selection set. So we get a comment back. Let's go ahead and get some stuff related to that comment. I'm going to grab the comment's ID. I'm going to grab the text for the comment, and I will also grab some information about the author. I'll grab the author's ID and the author's name. Perfect. Now, I know that's quite the mutation. There's a lot going on there, and it seems way more complex than it needs to be. Once again, just bear with me for the next several videos. When we actually integrate this into Node, the syntax we use will become a whole lot simpler. For the moment, though, we do want to test that this actually works. I'm going to click that play button, and there we go. We can see that the comment was indeed created. We have our comment ID and the comment text, and we also have the information expected about the comment author. That brings us to the final step D, fetch all comments, include their text and the author's name. So I'm going to go ahead and knock that out with one final operation. Over here, we're going to add a new tab into the mix. I'm going to set up a query And for this one, we're going to be using one of our queries. If we want to fetch all of the comments, we're going to be using the comments query. Now, the comments does indeed take a whole bunch of arguments, but they're all completely optional. You'll notice there is no exclamation mark after the types for any of them, so none are required, and we're not going to provide any. All we're going to do is set up the operation name. Then we're going to go right into our selection set. What do we want from each comment? I'm going to grab the ID. I'm going to grab the text field. And then I'll grab some information about the author, the ID, and the name. Perfect. If we fire this off, we should get the expected data back. Right here, everything looks good. We have our data property. On that object, we have our comments property. And this is an array of objects. Since we only have one comment in the database, we only have one object showing up. We have our ID and text, and we also have some of the associated data. So there we go. We now have a way to store real data in the database using GraphQL. We've seen this work with not just individual types, but also with relationships between our types, and we've also explored the Prisma API that's provided to us. Now, here's the interesting thing. So far, we've only interacted with Prisma via GraphQL Playground. But when it comes to actually integrating this into Node.js, we're not going to need to manually type all of this stuff out. We're going to start to see how that's possible in the very next video, which I am super excited to get to. For the moment though, let's go ahead and 1, delete all of those challenge comments, and 2, save the file. All right, that is it for this video. Let's start taking some concrete steps towards using the Prisma API from a Node.js backend.